Welcome to this Android development tutorial. This is part 3 of how to make a file manager app for Android. In the previous tutorials we learned how to create the layout, as you can see right here, and we also set up the text adapter, the list view adapter, and we displayed 100 elements on the screen. In this tutorial, we will learn how to set up the permissions to read and write to the storage of the device, and we also will actually learn how to get a list of the files of a directory and start displaying them on our file manager application. The first thing we need to do is to specify the permissions we need. So we go to our manifest file under the manifests folder, and we open an element and type uses permission and type storage, and we say read external storage will be the first permission that we will use, and the second one will be write external storage. Please check that you have these two lines exactly as I have right here. I am selecting them in order for you to see. Okay, Android requires us to specify the permissions we need, and after Android version 6, which is Marshmallow, we have to request permission usages at runtime. So we will also learn how to do that. Okay, after all of these, we will, after the text adapter class, we will override the onResume method. Override on protected void on resume. We open the method and we type super.onResume. So every time this method is called, we will check if we have permissions, because remember, if you go to settings on your Android device, you can disable the permission access from certain apps. That's why we have to check every time the app is resumed if we still have those permissions. Okay, so of course the first time we will request them, and then the later times we will check if we still have them. To do that, we will create a code, a kind of identifier for a permissions request. Okay, so we type private static final int, and in uppercase letters we say request permissions, and that we will set to a number. For example, it can be any kind of identifier, it doesn't really matter. For example, 1 2 3 4. Okay, doesn't really matter. Okay, and now we define a string array with the actual permissions we want to request. So we say, of course we will do it without without caps enabled, and we say private static final string array, and on caps permissions actually, because we will be asking for 2 permissions. Okay, we open square brackets, of course we have to end the line with a semicolon, and we say manifest dot permission dot read external storage, and we create a comma right here, and manifest dot permission dot write external storage. Okay, if we use this way, I think this is a good way of defining permissions, because we can add more permissions. Just type a comma and then add more permissions. As you can see here, we have a warning right here which says field requires API level 16, current minimum is 14. So to fix these, we will go and increase our API level to 16, okay? So we go to the left and open the Gradle script, and under module app, which is the second build.gradle file, we open this file and we search for min SDK version, which is the minimum SDK version our app will target. And I will change this from 14 to 16, okay? Because 14 is too old, so we are going a bit up to 16. We click on Sync Now, and we wait for the app to be synced. If you don't find the Sync Now button, you can also click on this top bar for this elephant button, and everything will work fine. So every time you modify this file, you have to do just that. Now, the warning has disappeared. Okay, now we will also create another field, static final int, that will be about permissions count. So permissions count. In this case, we are asking for 2 permissions, so we'll set it to 2. Okay. Okay. On the onResume method, we will later check if we have or not permissions. We will create a boolean that will enable us to do this. The boolean method, actually. So a boolean method will be private boolean are permissions granted, for example. Okay, in this way we will know if the permissions are granted or not. And here, as I told you, we only have to do this if we are on version 6 or Marshmallow or above. Okay, so to do that, we say if build that version that SDK int is a greater or equal than build that version, in uppercase, version codes actually, version codes that M stands for marshmallow, okay? So in this way, we're saying if the device is running marshmallow or higher, then we have to ask for permissions. Okay, now we create an int that will say it, call it p, for example, and we'll set it to 0. Okay, and here we say while p is less than permissions count, we will ask for a permission, or we check for a permission. To do this, we say check self permission, and we will pass our permissions p, because this is the pointer actually. Okay, p. If this is different than package manager dot permission granted. This means if the permission is not granted, we will return false, of course. So we return false. Okay. So we have an error right here. Check self permission. We have to close here the parenthesis. I think that's a problem. Yeah. So check permission. So here, I'm forgetting about the if. So it's if check self permission. Okay, permissions P is different than package manager permissions granted, then we return true. Is this logic correct though? No, it's not. So here we will have to say if it's equal, okay? So if the permission is granted, we return true, which means it's granted. And don't forget to increase P after this, okay? We return true. Okay, permission granted, but we don't want this to happen, right? Because we're returning true only when one permission is granted, okay? So we will change this a bit. And we will say our permissions not granted, but what's the opposite of granted? I mean denied or something. Our permissions permission denied. Okay, denied. Okay, our permissions denied. That's better looking, better logic. Okay. So here we say if permissions is different than granted, we will return true. This is way better than the previous case. So if permissions are not granted, if at least one of the permissions is not granted, we will say that the permissions are denied, and so this means we are returning true. Okay. Otherwise, we return on the end false, because this also applies for versions that are below Marshmallow, and if this didn't return true, this means that permissions are actually not denied, which means are granted. Okay? Now, on the onResume method, we will check if are permissions denied. So we are calling this, and if this returns true, this means that we have to request for permissions, right? So we have to request for permissions. Okay. To do that, we have to set and figure out how can we request actually for these permissions. So we are requesting for two different permissions. Okay, we are requesting for read external storage and write external storage. So if permissions are denied, we will say request permissions, and we will pass permissions and the request permissions code, which is request permissions. Okay, as simple as that. So if our permissions denied, then we request permissions. We have a warning right here. Of course, this requires API level 23. Okay. So we can either don't really care about this, we can ignore this, or we can actually care. It doesn't really matter because we are actually using that right here. But if we want to silence that warning, we will cut this line of code that checks a Marshmallow version. Okay. And we will put it here, and we will close it, and don't forget to delete this bracket right here in the case you need. Of course, now there's a warning right here at the top, but since this will be called only when we want, when a SDK is higher than 23, because that's what Marshmallow means. So this really doesn't matter, so we can ignore this because we're safely very safe, we call it this. So we can say suppress the warning. Okay. Okay. So right now we are doing this and we request permissions, okay, which is great for us. But now we have to know if the user accepted or not. We have to know if the user granted or not our permissions. For that, we will override another method. So we go override, okay, public void request permissions result, okay, on request permission result, and inside this we'll say final int request code, and here we say final string array. We receive the parameter permissions, okay, and final int array grant results. Grant results. Okay, so I can put this in new line for better readability. Okay, we open the method, and inside this method we say we call super dot on request permissions result, and we pass as first parameter request code, as second parameter we will pass permissions, as third parameter we will pass grant results. Okay, so here is the place in which we will know if the permission was granted or not. So we say if request code equals request permissions. So first of all, we are figuring out if we are getting the result we sent, and what we sent was the request permissions code, which is 1 2 3 4. Okay, so first we check that. So if request code is equal to request permissions, and we also say and grant result that length are greater than 0, in order for us to know we are not receiving empty results. Okay, so inside here we will again check if the permissions are not granted, and if they are not granted, we will do something really interesting, a trick that works great for my personal apps, and I have decided to share with you guys in these tutorials for Jerry Banfield. So what I do in my personal apps, something that I kind of invented myself, is the following. So here we say if are permissions denied. So this is kind of a clever way of doing stuff. So are permissions denied, we will clear. That's what I do with my apps. Maybe that's not useful for your apps, but it's great for my apps, okay? So we will clear the app data when the permissions are denied. And why do we do this? Because this enables us to keep asking the user for permissions, in order for us to kind of say to the user, you can only use these if you accept the permission. So it's way better, okay? With these, we eliminate the need for the user to go to settings and enable. You will see, okay? Okay, we go and open to parentheses. In the inside parentheses, we will say activity manager, okay? And outside these, we will say objects that require non-null. Okay, and inside this we'll say this that get system service. Okay, and we will pass activity service. Okay, and outside these three parentheses we type that clear application user data. And below this we say recreate. Okay, so here we have maybe some warning which requires API 19. And we can ignore this again because this will only be called when API is greater than 23 anyway. So we just ignore this. And what these two lines of code, which are the ones that I told you that I have kind of figured out by myself, enables you to keep asking for permissions without being locked by the Android system, which is great, okay, for us developers to know. Okay, so right now this is about it. Now we will run the app and check if the permissions are working fine. Okay, so again, on the unresume method, we will check if we are on SDK higher than 23 or Android version Marshmallow, and we check if the permissions are denied. If they are denied, we will request for permissions. Okay, and with this cool hack I showed you, will be very beneficial for your apps. Okay, so we wait for the app to be compiled. So it's already compiled, it's indexing the files, and we wait for the app to be run. And let's run again because something happened, really, I don't know why. But it's loading right now, so please bear with me and we will wait for the app to complete. Okay, here you see. Here is how the app asks for permissions. You say allow file manager to access photos, media, and files on your device. Okay, what if you type deny? Then the app's closed. Okay, the app's closed. If we open file manager again, it says allow file manager to access photos, media, and files on your device. And what if the user taps on don't ask again? So here is where the cool fix I show you comes into place. And we say deny. The app's closed. And what if the user starts the app again? It asks again. Okay, this is the magic of this trick. Without the trick, it won't appear and it will make your stuff a lot harder. So finally, in order to use the app, the user has to allow permissions and the app is ready to be used. Okay, so this video was kind of longer than I expected, so in the next video we will learn how to actually get the directories and all of that. I hope you enjoy it and I see you in the next one. Bye.